You found Ways We Learn, an investigation of how learning happens across all ages and modalities. Let's go learn something. So we talked about what's next for Kadama. Where do you see AI going in relation to schools? Because this is
Yeah.
something, I mean, I've worked with schools on this, doing training with them. I've been doing a lot of thinking about it. You're in the thick of it with the students themselves, and
Yeah.
you, I think, have a really unique perspective on this, just from all of the data you've been gathering, all of those interactions that you've had, that
hmm
you're monitoring, and what you've heard from
hmm
the students. But when you think about where education should be going vis-a-vis AI, where would you like to see that go?
Great question. Today, you can think of like AI as the calculator, but instead of only entering the STEM world, this is the calculator for various other subjects beyond just math, sciences, and so forth. And so, just like how in schools we have head of affairs or head of budget or the different leaders within the school that help create the curriculums, because AI is so central to our life now, we need a person who understands AI, whether it's an AI expert, somebody from the industry, to come introduce those new concepts to the curriculums. Because one thing I can say, there's a lot of things that have to change, but we can't just expect schools and the teachers to know how to make that change. At the end of the day, the math teacher may not know the potential. So they ask the AI person. They'll be like, well, with math, did you know that it can actually solve the problem? Not only can it solve it, it could do this, this, and this, and this, and even do this, this, and this, and this. So how about you factor that into your curriculum? Instead of starting them at the bare minimum, let's just assume they're going to get that from AI. Instead, start them one layer above. So make them understand the basic principles just so they know how to use the AI, because at the end of the day, you can't command prompt it if you don't know anything. Know the principles, but now we can scale their learning from just knowing how to, let's say, solve a problem to solving the problem and applying it to a real scientific problem happening in real time,
Mhm.
because we can do that now today. And that's how you can scale curriculums, having schools add, just like you add a VP of marketing, a VP of product in companies, same thing you do in government. We have that in the school system. We need this to be a mandatory thing. Somebody who knows AI, is up to date with the technologies, and can execute that and propagate it all the way down to all the classes.
I love that. Yeah. And the calculator analogy is so apt because the humanities haven't had a threat like this to the status quo in a long
Mhm.
time. And I mean, one of the things that even OpenAI has tried to do is create a cheating detector, and they walked that back because it was inaccurate, and Turnitin tried to do the same thing. And I don't know if they've walked it back, but it's already been proven that it's not working. But this is
Yeah.
the moment where education really needs to look carefully at what are we trying to accomplish and what do we do with this thing. And I love that idea. And I think a lot of schools do have people, or at least some of them do have people in place, the technology
Yeah.
integration team, the tech directors that would be able to look at this and go, hey, okay, so let's think about where we take this, where do we go forward with this? Because it, this is the moment where we need to figure out how do we shift our mindset about what our students should be learning, not to say they don't need to learn as much, but to say how can they go further with the assist of the tool. And if we don't figure this out now, we
hmm
are going to come up against students just using it in ways that we don't want them to use it, just
hmm
like they could do with a calculator if we don't give them guidance, if we don't write the right questions, if we don't assess the right ways. The same thing is going to happen in the humanities, and this is the moment where we need to do that. So I love that call to action for schools. Get people on this and help the teachers really figure out where we're going to use this thing for good purposes for learning.
Yeah. And schools will have to take a risk, by the way, like with doing this, because when you introduce change, uh, things could go right, things could go wrong. I do think we should identify the subjects that are most prone to people just cheating through, for example,
Hmm.
and focusing on those first. Like something like a drama class, right? You don't necessarily need it there, but something like writing essays, oh, for sure. And I'm letting them know that when they do take that risk, your worst case is already happening. A lot of students are already going to be cheating.
Yep.
So there's not much else risk, like, because if the biggest point of school is to help students learn, and a lot of them aren't learning, uh, the stakes here aren't too. They're not too crazy, right? I think anything you can do can only be a positive in this case, because the worst case is happening. people can deny it, but we have the stats, we see it, and it's probably worse than what we see.
Yeah.
We have to address the reality, the problem, to be able to come up with a solution. We can't just keep pretending things aren't happening or banning AI and thinking, oh, it's going to solve the problem, right? We have to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was one of my favorite conversations because like we talked about like a lot about the learning stuff, which I usually don't do on podcasts. And I feel like it allowed me to like actually like really express how I feel versus a lot of times I have to speak very high level because they usually don't care too much about the education concept. They're focused more on the business, the numbers, or social media, but not on the actual learning. And I feel like whoever listens to it will find a unique perspective. I hope, and I hope this gets to schools, as you said, because we both share a lot of passion for seeing change there.
I hope so too. I mean, there's yeah, there's so much in school. You said it, that the educational system really needs to shift. I did a professional development for a school
Mhm.
where I may have mentioned this to you when we talked. I introduced some of the people for the first time to
Oh yeah, you told
ChatGPT,
me about.
and it was,
Yeah,
I mean, it's eye-opening, right? Like New York City public schools banned it for 6 months before they
yeah,
finally turned that around. LA
yeah.
still bans it. Baltimore
Mhm.
bans it. There are major school systems that are just saying, hey, we'll just pretend this thing doesn't exist and it'll be fine. And meanwhile, the students who have access to it, meaning not the ones necessarily who depend on those schools for
Yeah.
access, but the more wealthy kids or whatever, they're just like, yeah, I'll use this thing. Why not? So, yeah, man, I hope that they wise up and start talking to people who really know how the students are operating and just kind of get their heads out of the sand on this stuff.
I feel like with AI right now, they're going to be forced to because when they recognize that while they delay, students are getting even better at using it.
Hmm.
In like people are learning like prompt engineering, as in
Hmm.
if before they couldn't make it do something, now they can make it do something, and these models are getting better. So it's their rate of like trying to stop it versus like the innovation, right? It's going to be impossible to stop. And I'm telling you, I don't want to share this on a podcast, or maybe I should have to scare them. But we've literally, because we do anonymous surveys, and we've had people say they've literally cheated through the full class using ChatGPT,
I believe it.
right?
I
The
completely believe it.
full class, right? And because you know why? By the way, you want to know why, right? We asked them, why haven't you been using us this quarter? Oh, my class literally there was no stopping me from using ChatGPT. I didn't even have like sometimes you could. The thing is, before ChatGPT, a lot of the tools, if it doesn't give you the answer, it's over, right? But ChatGPT can tell it, no, you're wrong. Try again. It's like you're commanding it, right? So now that concept where people used to a lot of them come for us because they can't Google search it. A lot of them, because some teachers aren't stopping it, they're able to run through the whole course
Wow.
with AI, and that's just if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what else I could say to scare you.
In that, yeah, in that PD that I did, I literally took a term paper prompt. I copied and pasted it into ChatGPT and I said, act like I'm a 10th grade student, write this paper for me.
Yeah,
It produced an outline. And I said, great, write the first section. And it wrote the first section. And then I said, great, write the second section. It wrote the second section. And I said, great, write me a bibliography. And it wrote the bibliography in
yeah,
Chicago format. I said, this took me about 5 minutes to generate your term paper.
yeah,
It's not perfect, right? You
yeah.
can, if you look at it, there's some stuff that's a little trite, but I could probably generate your term paper without having been in your class in half an hour. And
And get a B.
that's the world, right? And get a B, B plus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
minimum.
yeah,
Right.
minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did an assignment with my daughter when I homeschooled her last year, and the assignment was to write a full paper using ChatGPT. By the time she got to the end of it, she had managed to engineer this entire thing. And I had written a rubric, and I said, for your grade, part of it is using it to write the paper and getting an actual paper out of it. And then part of it is going the step further and actually making it a really good paper. And she did some of that, but didn't want to do a lot of that. And I had predicted to her, yeah, you're probably just plugging this stuff in. It'll probably generate about a B, B plus result. And it's the human factor that makes it really good. And she got an 87 on the paper because she didn't want to
Yeah.
put a lot more time in. But I mean, they say D's get degrees. It was an 87. Like she would have been fine in a class just turning in that without after doing basically no learning. And this is the
Yeah.
thing. This is the world we're in. We need to have a more nuanced approach to this, which is, listen, there are better ways to do this. There are reasons that you want to learn this stuff. let's make a connection that's going to help you feel like you don't want to cheat as much, maybe. It makes so much sense.
I agree with you. And again,
Well,
in this
obviously you
case,
do because you're doing it.
yeah,
That's
no,
your whole approach.
I was, I know, but I would, like it's the first of all, it's good that you recognize that as a parent. There's a lot of parents who don't recognize that, but also this could show you maybe learning how to write an essay isn't necessarily something that you should be focusing on. If we are capped at the end of the class to learn how to write an essay, I think they can introduce a new cap because we were able to fast pace this. Imagine, well, how about you actually go and write us a book that people are going to read and add value? I don't know.
Exactly.
Like,
No, that's exactly it. It's changing the learning objectives and changing the goals. And it's the
yeah,
what I said to the teachers that I was doing this PD with is this is the slide rule moment for the humanities. There's a reason that we stopped using slide rules in education and in the rest of the world because it's not as efficient. And if you can be more efficient and use the tools the right way, you're going to go further, and you're going to go further a lot faster. And it's exactly the way you're thinking about it, that it's, okay, cool. How do you generate a book? How do you generate a long form thing? How do you generate consistent output over time? Like, that's another thing it happens if you're writing it yourself because you have your own style. If you're using ChatGPT and you go in and say on 3 different days, write 3 different articles, you're going to get 3 completely different styles. So how do you modify the style? And it's thinking about the thing as a tool and not as the whole approach. And we really need schools to be thinking a lot more critically about what their objectives are and what are they trying to teach, because it's not just memorization anymore. It's not just the student's ability. It's student's ability supplemented that we need to be going after. That's the world we're going to be in.
yeah, no, 100%. I also think, by the way, like, I actually do think a lot of teachers actually they don't even know the potential. So it's hard for them to create a curriculum without knowing the potential. This is why these schools, we should have talked about this on a podcast. They should have actually like AI experts who come in as part of the board of the school, like driving the curriculum with an AI expert. You know what I'm trying to say? Because then they could imagine they don't need to be expert on any subject like math, right? The math teacher will just ask the AI guy, okay, what can I do with AI? Well, here's what we can do. Here's how you can build a curriculum. You know what I'm trying to say? And then now they can actually truly do it, because I also think it's unfair to expect the school to do this on their own.
Yeah.
Because none of these guys are the AI people.
They're not expert in it. How are they going to know
Well, that's
what
where
you can
bringing
do?
in leaders too.
Yeah.
Like people who know it too. So that's how they should do it. I feel like school should be it's the same thing. Like, you have good companies that make a lot of revenue, low revenue. I feel like some schools do a better job than other schools, but the point is, like, that needs to be enforced. Like, have somebody in AI, just like they have a person responsible for affairs, a person responsible for this. AI is part of our everyday life now. It's not just a calculator only for math. It's a calculator for everything. And yeah, so that's where I'll leave it.
Well, that's a great place to wrap.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
Good talking to you again.
So, folks, thanks for listening, and always keep learning.
Did you learn something just now? Get the full episode of Ways We Learn wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love to get your rating or review.